A newborn baby goes missing from a hospital's maternity ward in the early hours of the morning. The hospital is locked down. Panic spreads through the staff. When they review the security footage, they see a nurse calmly walking out with the infant in her arms. She's dressed in scrubs badge, clipboard, confident, just like everyone else. But no one knows her. No one remembers seeing her. Her ID doesn't scan. Facial recognition draws a blank. And worst of all, no record exists of any nurse like her ever working there. And now the baby is gone, without a trace. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above the maternity ward of Rosebridge General Hospital. It was 3:47 a.m. when Nurse Angela Ruiz noticed something strange on her routine rounds. Baby Ava Martinez's crib was empty. The tiny pink blanket was folded perfectly at the edge of the bed. The mother, Elena, lay asleep, too deeply asleep. Angela froze. She glanced at the monitoring chart. No scheduled feeding. No notes about Ava being taken for any tests. Her fingers tapped the side of the crib, her breath catching. She rushed to the nurse's station. "Has anyone taken baby Martinez out for anything?" she asked quickly, her voice slightly higher than normal. The two nurses on duty shook their heads. One of them, a tired-eyed man named Jake, blinked at his screen. "No record of her being checked out," he said, frowning. "You sure the baby's not with the mom?" Angela didn't answer. She was already halfway back to room 203. Elena was still asleep, too still. Angela shook her gently. Elena, wake up. Where's Ava?" Elena stirred slowly, blinking in confusion. What do you mean? You just came in to take her for a checkup." Angela's face dropped. "No, I didn't." That was the beginning of the nightmare. Within 10 minutes, the entire ward was locked down. Security guards stood at every exit. Hospital administrators arrived, half-dressed and wide-eyed, demanding explanations. Doctors were pulled from sleep. The head of hospital security, Dennis Alvarez, stormed into the ward with his badge swinging and a radio blaring static. "Get the camera feeds up now," he barked. The IT guy, a skinny young man named Rowan, pulled up the footage from the last 2 hours. They watched in silence. At 3:18 a.m., a nurse entered room 203. She wore hospital-issue scrubs. Her ID badge read K. Benton. Her hair was tied neatly under a surgical cap, clipboard in hand. She leaned over the crib, gently picked up Ava, and walked out. No hesitation, no rush, just like any other shift change. "Pause it," Dennis said. "Zoom in." The face was clear and motionless. A nurse, average build, nothing unusual. Except for one thing. There was no K. Benton on the hospital roster. "Check the employee directory," Dennis ordered. Rowan typed quickly. "No Benton. No one with that ID number. It doesn't even match our badge system. This isn't even one of ours." "Could it be a former employee?" asked Dr. Lillian Moore, the hospital director. "No," Dennis said firmly. "Our clearance system would have denied her access." "And it didn't." Angela looked pale. "I saw her earlier tonight. I thought she was one of the night shift reliefs." She signed something at the station, checked a vitals chart. They pulled up that footage too. There she was again, 2:45 a.m., standing at the nurse's station, flipping through papers, making small talk with another nurse who now swore she didn't remember speaking to anyone. "How the hell did no one notice her?" someone muttered. They called the police at 4:12 a.m. By 4:35, Detective Eric Mendoza from the Rosebridge PD arrived, still zipping up his jacket as he stepped into the war zone that had become the maternity ward. He reviewed the footage 3 times, saying nothing. "Have you run facial recognition?" he asked. Rowan nodded. "I did. Came up blank." "Blank how? No matches? Not in any of our databases." Hospital staff, state DMV, even ran it through social. Nothing. The detective looked around. "Where's the mother?" "She's sedated," said Angela quietly. She started hyperventilating. Her blood pressure spiked. Mendoza exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "We need to get a statement as soon as she wakes up. Meanwhile, I want everyone who was on duty tonight in separate rooms. We'll take statements one by one." He turned to Dennis. "Pull the full logs. Entry and exit times. Check the fire escapes, the sublevels, supply access. No one leaves this building without being cleared." By 6 a.m., every inch of the hospital was under scrutiny. No signs of forced entry, no tampered doors, nothing out of place, but Ava was gone. And the woman in the footage vanished too. The next hours were chaos. Media started to gather outside. Rumors spread quickly: baby stolen, nurse imposter, hospital under lockdown. Parents in the maternity ward were moved to different rooms for safety. Mothers clutched their babies like their lives depended on it. In the conference room on the 4th floor, Detective Mendoza and hospital officials watched the footage again. "She didn't panic," he said. "That's what bothers me the most. She knew where to go. She knew when to act. She didn't even look at the cameras. It's like she knew no one would question her." Dr. Moore leaned in. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he replied, "this wasn't random. It was planned. She wasn't just pretending to be a nurse. She was trained like one." Angela sat in a chair by the door, arms crossed tightly. "I swear I've seen her before, maybe not here, but somewhere. Her face, it's familiar." "You said she signed a vitals chart?" Mendoza asked. Angela nodded. "Yes, at 2:45 I saw her." "Where's that chart now?" Angela stood and hurried to the station. It was still there, clipped to the metal tray by the wall. Mendoza looked it over, handwriting. Neat, precise, a signature, K. Benton. They scanned it, no match, no fingerprint, no trace of who she was. At 7:32 a.m., Alina woke up. Her eyes were bloodshot, her voice hoarse. Her only words: "She looked normal." She even smiled at me. She told me Ava would be back in 15 minutes. She never came back. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Detective Eric Mendoza stood in the middle of the hospital conference room, arms crossed, staring down at the printed still images of the fake nurse. Each picture was crisp, taken straight from the security footage. Same face, same uniform, same calm expression, but behind that look was something dark, something careful. He was looking at a woman who had walked into a hospital, taken a baby, and vanished, all without leaving a single fingerprint, a single clear lead, or even a name that made sense. It was just after 10 a.m. when he called for a full meeting. The team from Rosebridge PD, hospital security, and administrators were all packed into the room. "We've confirmed it," Mendoza began. She bypassed at least 3 locked access points. No forced entry, no hacking. Her badge didn't just look real, it functioned like a real one. That means someone helped her from the inside. Gasps and murmurs swept the room. A nurse near the door shook her head. "No one would do that," she said, almost to herself. "We're family here," but Mendoza raised a hand. "Listen, I'm not accusing anyone yet, but someone had to give her access. These badges aren't something you can copy at a kiosk. And even if she forged the badge, the scanner read it as valid. That means she had system access." He looked at the head of IT, Rohan. "Can your team track which admin last modified badge access?" Rohan nodded. "Yes, but it'll take time. You've got 2 hours. Then Mendoza addressed the group again. "We're also requesting a list of every past employee who left within the last 5 years, terminated, resigned, even interns. Anyone who's worked in this building and could have learned the layout." Angela Ruiz, the nurse who first noticed Ava missing, raised her hand. "I've been here almost 10 years, she said. There was a girl about 4 years ago, quiet, always working nights. I think her name was Karen. She didn't talk much. Left after only a few months. It's probably nothing, but I keep thinking it might have been her." Mendoza made a note. "Karen what?" Angela frowned. "I don't remember. She wasn't on my shift often, but she had this calm way about her. Like nothing rattled her. Same kind of presence the woman in the footage had." By 1 p.m., Rohan returned with news. "We traced the badge access. Someone logged into the system at 2:07 a.m. and temporarily registered a new badge ID. It was wiped less than an hour later." "From where?" Mendoza asked. "Admin terminal, 3rd floor, staff lounge." "And who was logged in?" Rohan handed over the name, Tobias Graham. The room fell silent. Tobias was a veteran tech assistant, one of the longest-serving members of the IT team. Mid-40s, soft-spoken, friendly. Always on time, no known issues. Mendoza moved quickly. "Where is he now?" Rohan checked. "He's not scheduled today. Called out sick." Mendoza grabbed his coat. "Get me his home address." By 1:30 p.m., 2 patrol cars and an unmarked sedan pulled up to a quiet suburban house on Redwood Lane. A basketball hoop leaned against the garage. The grass was dry, lights off, car missing. Mendoza and Officer Grant knocked. No answer. They tried the back. Locked. Then Mendoza spotted it through a small window near the garage, a pile of burned papers in a metal trash bin. Still warm. They called for a warrant. 2 hours later, they were inside. The house was neat, barely lived in. But the office upstairs told another story. A dual monitor setup still running. Code scrolling on the screen. Drives wiped clean. On the desk, an old hospital badge with the name K. Benton printed in faded ink. Bingo. Grant opened a drawer and pulled out a folded paper, a photograph. A woman standing near a hospital doorway. Scrubs smiling, it was her, the fake nurse. Behind her, partially in frame, was Tobias Graham. They knew each other. They weren't strangers. This was planned. Mendoza stood in the middle of the office, gripping the photo. "Find him," he said. "Put out a bolo on Graham. Statewide, if he left today, he's still close." By 5 p.m., Mendoza got another call from a truck stop 40 miles outside Rosebridge. A gas station clerk reported a man acting strangely, buying prepaid phones and looking nervous. He paid in cash, the clerk told the dispatcher. "But I saw the photo on the news. That tech guy from the hospital. I'm 90% sure it was him." Mendoza raced to the site, but Tobias was long gone. What he did leave behind, however, was even more important. Security camera footage showed him speaking to a woman beside a dusty gray SUV. She was holding something wrapped in a large blue blanket. Her hair was different now, dyed black, cut short. But it was her, same woman, same calm eyes. And if you looked closely, the blanket was moving. That night, Mendoza sat in his office watching the footage on loop. Tobias had helped her. She was real. The baby was still alive. And they were out there. He slammed his fist lightly against the desk. They weren't dealing with an impulsive crime. This was careful, tactical, structured. Someone had studied that hospital, had practiced this, which meant this might not be the first time they'd done it, or the last. The gray SUV had tinted windows, no plates, and was last seen heading west on Highway 9. Detective Eric Mendoza stood at the State Surveillance Command Center 2 hours later, surrounded by technicians, maps, and traffic camera feeds. He leaned forward, eyes locked on a still frame of the SUV at the gas station. The woman in the footage was holding the baby. Clear as day. This wasn't just a baby napping. This was a coordinated escape. "Zoom in on the decal," he said to the tech on the right. On the passenger side of the SUV's rear window, there was a faint sticker, barely visible in the grainy footage. It looked like the logo of a towing company. "Enhance it, clean it up." After a few minutes, they got a match. Juneau Recovery Services. Small, private, family-run. Operated 2 counties west. Mendoza made a call. By 9 a.m. the next day, Mendoza and a local sheriff pulled into the gravel lot of Juneau Recovery Services. A 1-story building, half-painted, with 3 tow trucks parked out front. The manager, a wiry man named Caleb, stepped out to greet them, wiping grease from his hands. "We don't lease that SUV anymore," he said. "Sold it 2 months back, old fleet vehicle. Tinted windows were already on it when we got it at auction." "Who'd you sell it to?" Mendoza asked. Caleb scratched his head. "Some guy. Paid cash. Didn't give a name." Mendoza narrowed his eyes. "You didn't check ID?" Caleb shrugged. "Didn't think I had to. We weren't financing it or anything. It's a straight buy. We wrote him a bill of sale, and that was that." "You still have the bill of sale?" Caleb went back inside. A few minutes later, he returned with a crumpled copy. The signature was barely readable. "Tom Blackwell," it said, but the handwriting looked like a fake. But there was a phone number. Mendoza ran it through the database. It was a burner, registered only 3 days before the sale, then deactivated. Smart. Whoever planned this knew what they were doing. Still, the timing was important. The car was purchased after Tobias Graham was let go from the hospital for budget reasons. That lined up with the beginning of the fake badge activity. Mendoza made another connection. This whole thing wasn't rushed. It had been in motion for months. Back in Rosebridge, Angela Ruiz walked past the maternity ward with a fresh set of charts. But everything felt different now. Security guards stood near the entrance. Extra badge scans had been added. Mothers kept their babies in room unless absolutely necessary. Angela couldn't stop thinking about Elena. The way she'd looked that morning. Pale. Empty. Later that afternoon, Elena returned for questioning. Her husband, Marco, sat beside her, quiet eyes red. Mendoza met them in a private office. "I know this is hard," he said gently, "but anything you remember, no matter how small, could help." Elena nodded slowly. The woman, the fake nurse, she was soft-spoken. She didn't rush. I remember she touched Ava's head. "You're going to be safe now." I thought she was just being kind. Mendoza leaned forward. "Did she say anything else? Did she mention anything unusual? A name, a place, anything?" Elena blinked. "No, just that Ava looked healthy." And then she smiled at me, real calm. I remember thinking she looked more like a teacher than a nurse. Teacher? Yeah, something about her posture, the way she spoke. Like someone used to dealing with children. Mendoza scribbled in his notebook, "Thank you." After they left, he reviewed the footage one more time. This woman didn't flinch, didn't look around, didn't fumble with equipment. That meant training, and not the kind you pick up from a YouTube video. Later that night, Mendoza got a call from a federal task force agent named Dana Phillips. "We heard about your case. It might link to something we've been tracking." Mendoza leaned forward in his chair. "I'm listening." "We've had 2 other infant disappearances in the past 3 years. One in Colorado, one in Nevada. Both times the babies were taken from inside hospitals. No signs of forced entry. Both mothers described the nurse the same way, professional, calm, female, mid-30s. His eyes widened. "Any photos?" "Just one composite sketch, no video. But the descriptions line up almost exactly with your suspect." "So what are you saying? That this is a serial abductor?" "Possibly," she said. "But here's the thing, none of the babies have been found. No ransom, no bodies, nothing." Mendoza went silent. "What would someone want with newborns?" he asked finally. "We don't know, but here's what's worse. The medical records of both babies in those older cases were accessed days before the abductions. Same as Ava. And in both cases, a male tech employee at the hospital resigned shortly before the incident. His blood ran cold. Tobias Graham hadn't just helped. He might have been recruited." The next day, they traced Tobias's last bank withdrawal to an ATM outside a closed hardware store 2 towns over. They got grainy footage of him entering a brown sedan alone. The vehicle's plates were fake. The VIN was scratched off. But tucked into a trash bin near the store was a receipt. It showed the purchase of duct tape, travel-sized bottles, and a map of Northern California. Circling one highway route, Route 29. Mendoza stared at the map and circled the same spot in red. Ava could be anywhere, but at least now they knew the road they were on. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. It was nearly midnight when Detective Eric Mendoza and Agent Dana Phillips reached the northern stretch of Route 29, the one Tobias Graham's map had circled in red. The area was quiet, dark, lined with pine trees and distant cabin homes. No city lights, no passing cars, just the hum of their tires on asphalt and the sound of gravel popping under their wheels as they pulled over. "This area is mostly used for weekend rentals," Dana said, shining a flashlight at a wooden sign pointing toward Lake Whitley cabins. "No nearby motels. If someone wanted to hide out with a baby, this is the kind of place they'd pick." Mendoza scanned the tree line. Tobias was careful, but he slipped up with that receipt. "They're moving, which means we still have time. We just need one lucky break." They drove slowly up the gravel road that led to the cabins. The office was closed for the night, but the porch light was still on. Dana knocked hard. After a few minutes, a groggy older man with a thick flannel robe opened the door. "Office closed until 9, he grunted. "We're not guests," Mendoza said, flashing his badge. "We're investigating a missing infant. We believe someone may have stayed here recently using a false name." A man, mid-40s, traveling with a woman and a baby. The man blinked. "That your SUV back there?" "Yes." "Well, someone did check in 3 nights ago. Booked for a week, didn't give trouble, paid in cash." "Do you have a name?" Dana asked. He went back inside, rummaged through some papers, and returned with a handwritten ledger. "Here," he said, pointing at an entry. "Checked in under the name Mara Thomas. Gave me no ID." Dana's eyes narrowed. Mara was the name used in the Nevada case. Mendoza looked up. Which cabin? Number 6, but they're not there now. Left yesterday afternoon. Did they say where they were headed? Nope. Just packed up and drove off in some old beat-up sedan. Any cameras on the property? Mendoza asked. Just one, over the driveway gate. They followed him to the office and reviewed the footage. There it was, 2:14 p.m. the previous day. The woman, hair now dark and chin-length, carried a baby wrapped in a checkered cloth. She loaded it into the back seat while Tobias kept a lookout. But something caught Mendoza's eye. Just before she got in the passenger seat, she looked up at the camera and smiled. "Freeze that," he said. Her face filled the screen. Same soft features, same calm eyes, but this time she looked directly into the lens. That smile, Dana said, was intentional. She wants us to know she's ahead. Not for long, Mendoza muttered. We're catching up. The following morning, news of the ongoing investigation made national headlines. Photos of baby Ava, Tobias Graham, and the unidentified woman were everywhere. Tip lines flooded. Some were dead ends. Others hinted at sightings from the northern counties. The trail was warming up. Then, just after noon, a call came in from a roadside diner near the Oregon border. A waitress reported seeing a couple matching their description early that morning. They sat in the far booth. The woman ordered tea. The man barely spoke. They had a baby, the waitress said. Looked healthy. Sleeping, I think. Wrapped up tight, but the woman gave me a weird vibe. Like she was acting, smiling too much, being too polite. Mendoza and Dana arrived 3 hours later. The waitress, Megan, pointed them to the booth and described the car they left in. A rust-colored hatchback with no hubcaps. Oregon plates. She remembered because the back window was taped. We might have luck, Mendoza said, turning to Dana. Every station along this highway has security footage. If we catch the hatchback on camera, we can get their direction. They hit 3 gas stations before they got what they needed. At 11:02 a.m., the hatchback passed through the lot of a station in Maple Run. The footage was grainy, but they could clearly see Tobias at the wheel. The woman was in the back seat with the baby. They're not stopping, Dana said. They're running out of time. Mendoza called in a request for aerial surveillance from a highway patrol chopper. If they kept heading north, they'd eventually have to pass through Millfield Pass, a narrow highway with only one entrance and one exit. If they could block it, they might finally trap them. By dusk, units were in position. State troopers waited at the northern exit of Millfield Pass. A chopper hovered low above the trees. At 7:28 p.m., the hatchback appeared. It slowed at the curve, then picked up speed when the flashing lights ahead became visible. They're trying to reverse, someone shouted over the radio. But the southern entrance was already blocked. Tires screeched. The hatchback tried to U-turn but hit a ditch and spun into a shallow ravine. Officers surrounded the vehicle, guns drawn, hands where we can see them. Tobias stepped out first, hands up, shaking. He didn't resist. The woman stayed in the car. Dana approached slowly, her weapon raised. Step out of the vehicle, now. Then came a sound that made everyone freeze. A baby's cry. The woman stepped out slowly, Ava bundled in her arms. She didn't look panicked. She didn't look afraid. She looked relieved. I kept her safe, she said softly. That's all I did. She placed Ava gently into Dana's arms, then dropped to her knees and put her hands behind her head. Mendoza rushed forward. Ava's breathing, he said quickly. She's okay. Dana looked down at the baby, warm, awake, alive. Detective Eric Mendoza sat across from the woman in the cold, dim interview room. She was handcuffed to the metal table, still wearing the same plain clothes from the day before. Her short black hair was slightly messy, but her posture was straight. Her name as she gave it was Carmen Doyle, though that name was nowhere in any system they could find. No license, no tax record, no birth certificate, fake name, fake identity, but the calm in her eyes was very real. You know what you did, Mendoza said, keeping his voice even. I do, Carmen replied, and I'd do it again. He leaned forward. You stole a newborn. Walked into a hospital like it was your workplace. Lied to the mother's face. Made her believe you were helping. Carmen met his stare without flinching. I didn't hurt her. I didn't hurt the baby. I gave her the care she wasn't going to get. Mendoza paused. What do you mean by that? She tilted her head. You think these hospitals are perfect. You think everyone inside is doing their job. But that baby, she was marked, labeled as at risk. A file like that can follow a child forever. Dana Phillips stepped into the room then, a folder in hand. She laid it on the table and opened it. You accessed Ava Martinez's medical records 4 days before the abduction, Dana said flatly. You used Tobias Graham's credentials. You went straight to her chart. So this wasn't random. You picked her. She wasn't safe, Carmen said. Mendoza narrowed his eyes. Safe from what? But Carmen went quiet. Meanwhile, in another room, Tobias Graham sat slouched, eyes red, his fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. An officer handed him a bottle of water. He took it but didn't drink. I didn't want to do it at first, Tobias said quietly. But she convinced me, said the baby's life was in danger. Detective Lane, a colleague of Mendoza, leaned forward. You expect us to believe that? I had access, Tobias said. I could see the files. She asked me to check. At first I thought she was paranoid, but then I saw some strange entries. Ava had been tested multiple times in the NICU, but the reports didn't match the notes. Lane frowned. You're saying someone falsified records? I don't know. I just know it didn't make sense. Some of the test codes weren't standard. Some pages were out of order. Carmen? She told me hospitals sometimes cover things up to avoid lawsuits. She said Ava would end up being part of a quiet research group if someone didn't intervene. Lane closed his notebook. And you believed her? Tobias looked down. I didn't want to, but the way she explained it, it sounded real. By midday, Ava was reunited with her parents under strict hospital supervision. Doctors ran full evaluations. She was healthy. No signs of harm, just tired and hungry. Alina clutched her baby like she would never let go again. She looks the same, she whispered, holding back tears. But I know she's not. She's been through something. I don't know what, but she knows. Outside the room, Mendoza watched through the glass, his face unreadable. What are you thinking? Dana asked beside him. She was taken for a reason, he said. Carmen and Tobias didn't just do this on a whim. They believed they were rescuing her. That means either they're both crazy, or something deeper is going on, Dana finished. Mendoza returned to Carmen's interview room. You keep saying she wasn't safe, he said, sitting down again. You keep acting like you did something noble, but stealing a baby doesn't make you a hero. Carmen folded her hands. You want to believe your system works, that it protects people, but what happens when it doesn't? Tell me what happened from the start. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, 4 years ago, my sister had a baby, born at Rosebridge, like Ava. She died in the NICU. They said it was natural, said she had a heart defect. But my sister, she wasn't convinced. And she filed a complaint, asked for the charts. They gave her pages with missing details. She pushed harder. Then the hospital's lawyer started calling. Suddenly, they were saying she caused the death. Neglect. It broke her. She couldn't handle it. Took her life 2 months later. Mendoza sat still. Carmen's voice didn't shake. After that, I started looking into the hospital. Their neonatal files, public records. I found more mothers, ones who were afraid to speak up. Same patterns, tests done, results hidden, babies gone. But no one ever linked them, because no one was looking. So you decided to steal one? I decided to save one. He didn't answer right away. Where did you keep her? He finally asked. At safe houses, places with no cameras. Always clean, quiet. I fed her, changed her, held her. Ava was never in danger with me. Mendoza stood up. Even if what you're saying has truth, you don't get to play God. No, Carmen agreed. But someone had to do something. Later that evening, Mendoza pulled Ava's chart again. It looked normal at first glance. But then he remembered Tobias's words. The test codes didn't match. He dug deeper. Pulled a request for blood work logged at 2:11 a.m. The same night Ava was taken, but the test wasn't authorized by any doctor. No initials, no corresponding chart entry. He flagged it and sent it to a medical consultant outside the hospital system. Then he checked other recent births marked at risk. 3 other charts had the same strange code. He opened his email, heart racing slightly. To Dana Phillips, subject, urgent chart review request. I think Carmen may be telling the truth. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. 3 days had passed since Ava was rescued. The hospital had released a public statement praising law enforcement for their swift recovery of the baby and assuring the community that all security measures were being re-evaluated and strengthened. But Detective Eric Mendoza knew better. He sat at his desk with a stack of folders spread in front of him. He'd been cross-checking neonatal records from the last 5 years. So far, he'd found 6 other infants listed with the same strange test code that had appeared in Ava's chart. All of them had died in the NICU, and each time, the cause of death was vague complications, sudden failure, or underlying condition. Each time, the doctor on call had been Dr. Norman Kelso. Mendoza stared at the name. Kelso was no stranger to the staff at Rosebridge. He was respected, polite, even admired by some of the younger doctors. But there were rumors, too, that he kept to himself, that he hated being questioned. Mendoza stood, picked up the phone, and called Dana Phillips. "I think we found our link," he said. An hour later, Mendoza and Dana walked into Dr. Kelso's office. He sat behind a large oak desk, wearing his usual white coat and polished wireframe glasses. He didn't seem surprised to see them. "I heard about the recovery," he said. "Glad the baby is safe," Mendoza nodded. "That's why we're here. We're still piecing things together, and your name came up." Kelso leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "How so?" "We found a series of unusual lab requests tied to your ID, blood work ordered at odd hours, missing authorizations, no corresponding notes in the patient files." Kelso didn't blink. "If you're suggesting I did something unethical, you'd better have more than missing paperwork." Dana laid out the evidence. They had so far 6 cases, same pattern, same test code, all tied to him. "I reviewed those cases personally," Kelso replied. "If anything was missing, it was a clerical error. These were high-risk infants. Some had genetic markers. Others came in under emergency circumstances. The testing was part of a research protocol, fully approved." "Approved by whom?" Mendoza asked. Kelso hesitated for a fraction of a second. "By the board." "Funny," Mendoza said. "Because we spoke to the board this morning. They said they've never authorized genetic testing of newborns outside a formal study. And they never approved anything under your name." Kelso's face remained calm, but his fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. "You're grasping," he said. "This is a hospital, detective, not a conspiracy lab." "Then why were some of those blood samples sent off record to a private biotech company in San Diego?" Dana asked. "You used a personal courier, not hospital transport." "We confirmed it." Kelso said nothing. "You weren't documenting your research," Mendoza added. "You were collecting samples, quietly, repeatedly, and every time something looked irregular, the baby didn't make it." Kelso finally stood. "This conversation is over." "No," Dana said. "It's just beginning." She served him with a court order to freeze his hospital access and collect all of his patient records from the last 5 years. That evening, Mendoza met with Elena and Marco Martinez in a small side office. "I need to be honest with you both," he said. "We believe someone inside the hospital was running unauthorized genetic tests on infants. Your daughter may have been targeted as part of that." Marco looked stunned. "Why her? We don't know yet," Mendoza replied. "But we're investigating every baby born at Rosebridge over the last few years. So far, Ava is the only one who survived after being flagged." Elena gripped her husband's arm. "You think they were using our daughter for experiments?" "We don't have all the answers yet," Dana said. "But Carmen Doyle may have uncovered more than we first believed." Back at the station, Carmen sat in a holding cell. Her lawyer had arrived, but she refused to speak to anyone but Mendoza. He entered the room. "I need to know what you really found," he said. She looked up. "I already told you. They were using these babies." "No, you hinted. Now I need details." She leaned in. "The biotech company Alexa Genetics. They've been buying data, quietly. Hospitals pass it off as research partnerships. But it's deeper than that. They're looking for patterns, markers. It started with adults. Now they're targeting infants. Why? Because early DNA is cleaner, fewer environmental changes, easier to trace developmental anomalies. And once they find something interesting, they push it, and the ones who don't match?" Mendoza asked. She looked down. They're discarded. He stared at her for a long time. You should have come forward, he said. I did, she replied quietly. No one listened. By the end of the week, Rosebridge Hospital was in crisis. The state health department launched a formal investigation. Dr. Kelso was suspended, and subpoenas were sent to Alexa Genetics requesting every shipment they received from Rosebridge. Tobias Graham agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. He gave them access to encrypted files Carmen had shared with him, emails, invoice records, and tracking logs showing test samples tied to infant ID numbers. Each log had a status match or no match. The ones labeled no match were all from babies who didn't survive. One night, Mendoza sat alone in his office, reading the last of the reports. Carmen's story, once wild and unbelievable, was suddenly rooted in fact. He looked at a printed photo of Ava, smiling in her mother's arms. This time, it wasn't about chasing shadows or guessing motives. Now they had names, now they had records, and now they had a way to stop it. 6 weeks had passed since the night Ava was found. 6 weeks since Carmen Doyle kneeled on the cold pavement and surrendered. Since Tobias Graham gave up the secrets tucked inside encrypted folders. And in that short time, the story that began with a quiet abduction in a hospital nursery had shaken a whole system. Detective Eric Mendoza stood in the hallway outside a courtroom, watching reporters press their faces to the glass doors. Cameras clicked, voices buzzed. The world wanted answers. Inside, Carmen sat calmly at the defense table, hands folded, dressed in a plain gray blouse and slacks. She didn't wear makeup, didn't smile for the press, but she also didn't look defeated. Beside her, her attorney reviewed notes. Across the room, prosecutors shuffled folders, loaded with evidence. Carmen had been charged with kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy. Her actions, no matter the motive, had broken the law. But something had changed in public opinion. People had started asking different questions. Not just, why did she do it? But also, why was she the only one who saw what others ignored? The judge entered, cameras cut off. The hearing began. Mendoza stepped back from the glass. He'd already given his statement under oath. So had Dana Phillips, but even now, he wasn't sure how it would all end. 2 days earlier, federal agents raided the San Diego offices of Alexa Genetics. They arrived with trucks, warrants, and a list of names tied to unauthorized research activity. Every server was seized, boxes of test kits, internal emails, data logs. They found more than Mendoza expected. Alexa had signed over 30 data-sharing agreements with hospitals in 6 states. Some were legal. Most were shady, hidden under vague language, and buried in subcontracts. At least 18 babies had died after being flagged during Alexa's private screening process. No parents were ever informed their child was part of any study. Ava had been the exception, because Carmen had stepped in. In a quiet conference room, Mendoza met again with Elena and Marco Martinez. Baby Ava sat between them in a tiny pink hoodie, gurgling, her little fingers wrapped around a stuffed lamb. We wanted to thank you, Elena said, her voice stronger now. Not just for bringing her back, but for not giving up when things got complicated. Mendoza smiled faintly. She's a fighter. Elena nodded. We talked about Carmen. A lot. I was angry at first, but now... I don't know what I would have done if she hadn't taken her. Marco chimed in. We're not defending what she did, but we understand why she did it. That makes it hard to hate her. Mendoza glanced at Ava. She never stopped protecting her. Not once. Back in the courtroom, the final day of Carmen's hearing arrived. The prosecution gave their closing argument. Carmen had broken the law, had put others in danger, had manipulated Tobias Graham, and no motive could excuse stealing someone's child. Then it was the defense's turn. Carmen's lawyer stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, my client did not deny her actions. She admits to what she did, but she did not act for money. She did not act out of revenge. She acted to stop something the hospital never acknowledged, a quiet pattern of unethical testing that harmed children without consent. She brought evidence no one else dared to uncover, and because of her actions, lives will be protected going forward. Then Carmen herself stood. I am not asking for forgiveness, she said clearly. I know I crossed a line, but I crossed it to stop something worse. I didn't steal Ava to hurt her. I took her because I believed no one else would protect her. And if I had to go back, knowing what I know now, I'd do it again. Silence. The courtroom was still. The judge read the decision. Carmen would serve 18 months in a minimum security facility with credit for time served, followed by supervised release. The court recognized her motive as mitigating, but could not ignore the law. She didn't cry, she simply nodded. Then she turned to see Elena standing at the back of the courtroom, holding Ava. They locked eyes for a brief second. Elena gave her a small, slow nod. No words, just an understanding. And then she walked away. Weeks later, the hospital board at Rosebridge resigned in full. A state task force was formed to audit all data sharing between hospitals and private research firms. New legislation passed requiring full parental consent for any testing beyond standard care. Carmen's actions had started a ripple no one could stop now. As for Tobias Graham, he received a sentence of community service probation and a lifetime ban from handling patient records. He had cooperated fully, and despite his mistakes, he became a key figure in revealing what had been going on behind the scenes. He disappeared from public life after the trial, keeping a low profile. Dana Phillips was promoted. Mendoza turned down a transfer to a federal task force and stayed with the department. Some stories weren't about heroes or villains, just people making impossible decisions in the gray space between wrong and right. 3 months later, Mendoza visited a park near the hospital. It was quiet, sunny. Ava toddled across the grass while Elena sat nearby on a blanket. Marco waved from a bench, laughing as she tried to chase a butterfly. "She's walking already?" Mendoza asked, smiling. "Started last week," Elena said. "She doesn't stop now." Mendoza crouched beside her and held out a finger. Ava grabbed it with her tiny hand and squealed. "She doesn't remember any of it," Elena said softly. "But I do, and I'm still healing." "I think we all are," Mendoza replied. He watched as Ava stumbled, giggled, and got up again. Somehow, through everything, she was still just a child, unaware of the battle that had been fought around her. A baby who had vanished from the world for a short time, and returned not as a victim, but as a reason for change. And that, Mendoza thought, might be the most important part of all. If you liked this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, another, to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.